My heart pounded against the inside of my ribs, so hard I thought the 3 men and 1 woman on the other side of the scratched committee table could see it moving my shirt. The windows behind them let in too much morning light, dazzling my eyes, making the outlines of their faces look hard and unforgiving. No one called my name when I entered the room, they just kept talking amongst themselves, snippets of sentences about budget allocation and outcomes metrics. I sat as they directed, clutching the folder with my portfolio inside. A man with more hair in his eyebrows than on his head cleared his throat. "Viola Lee," he said, scanning some printout in front of him, "thank you for your submission. We've reviewed your fashion design major application. It's compelling in some ways, but I'm afraid you don't meet the criteria for advancement to the final round." I blinked once, twice, my hands squeezed the folder. I heard the committee's voices as if they were underwater, unfocused and distant. "We genuinely appreciate your enthusiasm," the woman chimed in with a smile carefully calibrated for neutrality, "but your designs, unconventional silhouettes with recycled street materials, are perhaps ahead of what our program is aiming for. We recommend refocusing your energy elsewhere." I nodded stiff. "Thank you for your time." My words floated into the space like feathers. No one met my eyes as I stood, teeth pressed into my lip to keep it from trembling. I gripped the folder so tightly the corners bent. Outside, the corridor was silent. The city of Sydney swirled beyond the frosted glass, sun over the spiky outline of the university's towers, and through the gum trees, the air thick and bright and almost sour with someone's cheap lemony perfume. The sound of my shoes on the linoleum, the far-off echo of someone laughing, all carved a vivid ache through me. Oh, I wanted to wail. I wanted to smash my sketches and scream at the quiet, dismissive way they'd said thank you. I walked 5 blocks home, the day growing hotter with every step. My phone buzzed in my pocket, a message from my mum, Chinese characters. "Did you get the result yet?" I didn't answer. When I got home, my nan was waiting in the kitchen, hunched small at the linoleum table. She shuffled her feet. "So," she said, looking at my hands instead of my face, "did you get it?" I shook my head, throat so tight I could barely push the air out. "No," I said, "they don't want me." She let out a sharp, soft humph. "Go to TAFE instead. Learn hairdressing like your cousin. Stable job, not so up and down like this design thing." She gestured vaguely, as if this design thing was an invisible cloud over my head. I wanted to argue, but the hurt, knife-sharp, hot, humiliating kept me silent. That night at dinner, Mum told everyone the news in her brisk, matter-of-fact voice. My brother didn't even look up from his phone. My uncle snorted. "I told you," he said, licking barbecue sauce off his fingers. "In this country you need a real job, not performance clothes." "Silly clothes for silly people, that's what," my aunt said, laughing. "Who's going to wear clothes made out of traffic cones?" I flushed. She passed me the rice and didn't notice my hands shaking. The rejection became a ghost that hovered over me for weeks. The city felt smaller. Even the sweep of the harbour looked like it was cut with sharp scissors, too precise, too sure of itself. At night I sketched and tried not to cry. I drew wild shapes, jackets made from strips of seatbelt, pants that glowed with chemical light, dresses sculpted out of netted onion bags. With each line the sting dulled slightly, replaced by pure stubbornness. I kept thinking, they didn't get it, it doesn't mean I'm wrong. Still, at home and in our community, the tangle of relatives and neighbors who all seemed to know each other's business, my failure was a running joke. Whenever I passed down George Street, women would nudge each other, whispering in Cantonese. They said I was artistic, but with a sneer that made it sound like a disease. I found a retail job at a department store, selling men's shirts off bland chipboard racks. On days off, I'd trawl up shops for strange finds, take them home, deconstruct and rework them until the seams barely held together. Every spare dollar became spools of thread, zippers, hardware from hardware shops. I watched YouTube videos, learned to draft my own patterns on butcher's paper. Sometimes I let myself daydream that one day I'd show them all. Most weeks my family's disbelief was just a background noise, like the sound of buses idling outside. But sometimes, like at Christmas, when the entire extended family sat around a table jammed with plates, it became louder and sharper. "I see Megan's daughter is in real estate," my uncle would say, looking at me as if the comparison would salt the wound. "She drives a nice car now, not like you still making strange clothes, Vi." People would laugh. I'd smile tightly and keep eating my noodles. Every time a little more dignity chipped away, but underneath the pain was something harder, an iron certainty, stubborn and weird and alive. After 5 years, the city changed, and so did I. I moved into a shoebox flat near Redfern, entered every contest I could find, art fairs, student shows, indie markets. My big break came when I stitched together a jacket made of fused grocery bags and street banners, with rainbow-painted salvage buttons and trailing ribbons like dancing paper dragons. I was 24 and my fingers bled from sewing through plastic, but I submitted it to a Sydney pop-up for emerging designers, assuming nothing would come of it. But that night, walking past the window, I saw people standing around my jacket. Photographers with big popping flashes, people pointing, talking, smiling. One glossy-haired woman in a pantsuit stopped me. "Did you make this? We want it for Green Vogue's cover shoot." My world lurched sideways. I called my mum that night. "Guess what?" I said. "My work is going to be on a magazine cover." She was silent for a full 5 seconds. "Oh, that's nice," she said finally, voice brittle around the edges. It was more than nice. The magazine came out and people started emailing stylists, art directors, shop buyers. Within a year, I signed a deal to produce a capsule collection. I borrowed from friends, stitched every piece myself. They sold out. Then came the Sydney Fashion Week call. Through it all, I worked constantly, sewing, researching, bargaining for deadstock materials from warehouses out past the airport, poring over business forms I barely understood. I ate $2 packets of noodles, shared a flat with 3 other girls who barely saw me except for sleep. Fame didn't arrive overnight, it was more like a slow dawn. First, small nods, people recognizing my name at art events, email offers I could barely believe. Then, real press, an article in the Sydney Morning Herald, a run-once slot on a local TV show where they filmed me pulling apart a discarded high-vis vest and making it into something soft and beautiful. People who'd mocked me before now sent DMs on Instagram. "So proud of you, Vi." Old teachers wrote Facebook posts about my persistence, but my family at home in the flat above the bakery in Marrickville still didn't really get it. Until the homecoming 3 years later, the invitation arrived out of nowhere. The Sydney Arts and Design Centre was opening a brand new space and they wanted to mount a solo show of my work, Against the Current. Viola Lee Retrospective. It was the gallery at my old university, the one where that committee had shut me down. They planned a launch party. They said I could invite anyone I liked. I stared at the invitation, feeling old hurts burning quietly far down inside. I called Mum. "There's an exhibition, it's at the uni. Will you come?" She hesitated. "Your auntie will want to go. I'll see if Nan's leg is good enough. Maybe your uncle if he's not working." It was the most interest she'd ever shown. The night of the opening, Sydney glowed with that late summer heat that turns the air to syrup and makes everything glitter. I wore one of my own designs, a jacket made from rescued tarpaulin with embroidered strips of old-school ties for trim. I'd brushed my hair flat, tried to keep my nerves from escaping onto my face. My heart hammered, but this time I knew how to stand up straight. The exhibition space was twice as big as I remembered. Bright lights poured over the sculptures and mannequins, garments formed from roadwork mesh and vintage silks, denim jackets slashed and resewn into sharp, asymmetric lines, dresses with brocade insets and old campaign banners for sleeves. My first plastic dragon jacket was mounted on a turntable slowly spinning. Guests trickled in, friends, critics, fashion people with huge glasses and sharper cheekbones. Wine glasses chimed, someone's laughter carried over the crowd. Then came my family. They clustered together, shy at first, scanning the room with the careful suspicion of people entering a strange, expensive restaurant. My uncle's mouth tugged sideways in a skeptical half-smile. Mum looked overwhelmed, blinking rapidly. Nan shuffled to my side. "So, these are all yours?" she asked. "All of them," I said. She reached out and touched the sleeve of a patched-up coat, fingers trembling. "So strange, but not ugly," she said quietly. The gallery's director called everyone's attention to the front. I stood by her, light burning white across my face. "Ladies and gentlemen," the director said, "Viola Lee is a designer whose vision transforms the most ignored materials into something astonishing. She reminds us that beauty is everywhere, and that courage and stubbornness can create art where no one expected it." The applause was a living thing, bright, loud, pure energy. Flashes popped as photographers snapped photos. I managed not to cry somehow. My family watched from the front row, Mum stiff with pride, Nan dabbing her eyes, Uncle silent in awe. After the speeches, strangers crowded me, passing business cards, asking for collaborations, calling my designs revolutionary. My aunt circled back around the displays a dozen times, pointing me out to her friends, as if she'd been in my corner from the start. But the moment that changed everything, the moment I'll never forget, came at the very end. My uncle stood in front of the sum of my biggest piece, a dress coat made entirely from fragments of decommissioned bus seats, neon and blue with its tails swinging behind. He ran his hand over the fabric, squinting. "So this will be sold, like in real shops?" I nodded. "Already spoken for, there's a waiting list." He looked at the crowd, at the well-dressed buyers clustering near the catalogue. Then he looked at me, really looked, for the first time in years. "I was wrong," he said. His voice was low, words awkward. "Thought this was all nonsense, but you did it. You made something real." He gripped my shoulder, not hard but steady. "I'm proud of you, Vice." My knees went weak. I stared at the floor, too full to answer. Mum pressed a tissue into my hand. "Next time, let us help you," she said softly. Her other hand found mine and squeezed. Outside, the city spun on, horns blaring, neon shining on wet pavement, the air thick with the tang of eucalyptus and distant traffic. The familiar lights of Sydney shimmered past the glass, and I felt finally that I'd come home. Not because I'd changed for them, but because I'd stood my ground until my dream became part of the world's story, not just a punchline at the dinner table. Later, when the crowd thinned out, I walked out onto the steps with Nan. We looked at the harbour bridge in the distance, silver against blue-black. "You showed them what you can do," she said, her accent turning the words round and warm. "You never gave up." I shook my head. "Never," I said, marveling at how the past could bruise and heal at the same time. I returned, "Yes, but in my own way, not asking for their blessing, but ready to share the proof that the ridiculous dreams are sometimes the most powerful kind. Ready, finally, to forgive and let them into my world, even as I made it new and dazzling and fully my own."